it's a lot of work, but it's all worth it. And we probably have, even just from Stithton here, about 70 to 80 people that help us get through the week, mainly all the stuff that has to be done here on site and taking meals out to the sites and cleaning up and things like that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jack and Terry Show. Our special guest today is Denver Copeland, very familiar person around here in Radcliff. He's the senior pastor at Stithton Baptist Church, a U.S. Air Force veteran, and he's also the coordinator of World Changers, a national association to focus on mission work. Pastor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Of course, I'm with my co-host, Jack Connicky, the granddaddy of all small businesses in Radcliff. Jack, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Terry. Good to see you, Denver.
Well, now, it's interesting about Pastor Copeland. I've been working with him on a little commercial project that we have down the road here. And I always found the pastor to be a very smart man. But when I read his biography and realized he lived in Hawaii for 20 years, then he up and moved to Radcliff, started to wonder about that. What do you think, Jack?
Oh, that's funny. The reason I'm saying it's funny, it brings to mind a story I read on social media this week about a man in Hawaii who went to a church, and there was a red phone in there, a pay phone, and it had a sign on it called Heaven, $25,000. Well, he didn't have $25,000, so he just walked on and went about his things. He comes to Kentucky, walks into a church, and there's a same red payphone called Heaven, 25 cents. He looked over and there's a pastor standing there. He says, "Pastor, wow, why is it only 25 cents to call Heaven from here in Kentucky? And it was 25,000 in Hawaii." The pastor says, "It's a local call."
Oh, that's pretty good, Jack. Oh, all right, Pastor, talk to us about World Changers. That's the reason, folks, that's the reason we invited the pastor on today. He's a local coordinator for that. It's a big project, needs a lot of community involvement. But Pastor, go ahead and explain to us a little bit about your inspiration for getting involved in that program.
All right. Yeah, well, I have to correct one thing. I was in Alaska 25 years and then only 8 years in Hawaii. And so
some
and then
extremes right there, isn't it?
two extremes. And then coming here, people always ask me why, and I said it had to be a God thing. No other way would I have done it, because Hawaii was great. So
Yeah.
but about in the late 90s, I got involved with World Changers. They've been around since 1990 is when they started. In the late 90s, they were going to bring in the first group to Alaska, and I traveled about 3.5 hours to hear them meet. And we were in a poor area where I was at, and so I raised my hand and said, "Why don't you come to a place that needs you more than Anchorage does?" And they took me up on it. And so we started doing projects, and then I started helping coordinate all of them in Alaska, and we did about 4 projects a year there. Then I went to Hawaii, and we brought them to Hawaii. But the reason I got involved with them was they were a fine oiled machine. I've never been a part of anything that was as organized as they were, had the leadership that they had, and mainly using youth to do the work. So youth were learning how to do a skill in helping out, and adults were showing them how to do it, working together, and then having services every night. It was a whole lot better than what camp was or anything else that we did with youth. It really gave them something to be proud of. They helped people that were in need. A lot of times senior citizens, we've had help people in their 90s and above. We've done everything from roofs to ramps to almost total remodels. And we only have 4 days to work. So we break up in teams. They sleep in a church. They eat here at the church. We take them meals to the sites. There's a lot gets done, and then services at night. So it's a lot of work, but it's all worth it. And we probably have, even just from Stithton here, about 70 to 80 people that help us get through the week, mainly all the stuff that has to be done here on site and taking meals out to the sites and cleaning up and things like that.
Right, the support staff. I knew that was large. In order to keep them on the job and keep everybody supplied with the resources, takes a lot of back office folks. Well, tell us a little bit about the next opportunity that you have to do this. I know it's coming up this summer. Summarize that event for us, Pastor.
Yeah, right now we're scheduled for July the 10th through the 14th. Those dates are firm. There's no doubt about it. We've already got 218 people signed up. By the time it happens, we should have real close to 240 or 250, I would think.
Wow.
I've pretty much knocked on almost every door of any house that we've done and asked the people if they can use help. Now people are getting used to the word or understand it, who World Changers are. But at first, I would tell people, and nobody believes they get something for free.
Right.
And so, and that's one of the problems. So World Changers itself provides volunteer labor. They don't provide any funds. All the one participants pay money to come, but that covers a lot of the food and stuff like that, and covers some of the upper support that has to happen. But then the materials have to be bought locally, and that's where we don't have any organizations here in this area. In Hawaii and in Alaska, we used USDA rural development funds and other people's funds. Well, unfortunately, Radcliff area does not get those funds. Yes, but Elizabethtown does. And so,
Really?
yeah, that's one of those things. We raise somewhere between 20 and 30,000 each year just to do this 1 week. And it's getting tougher and tougher all the time to do that. And so, but all the money that comes from the materials comes locally. And lunches are one of the things that we like to get restaurants involved in. I have to give it to Copeland's. Copeland's has provided lunch for free 1 day every week we've had it for the last 5 years. And so I have to give them a plug on that because they've done that. Some of the others give us discounts. And so we look for places to give us lunch. When you're talking about, by the time it's over 250, 275 lunches, that's a lot of lunches. And so that's just one of the facets of this thing. It takes a whole lot of people doing it, a whole lot of people delivering those to 20 some sites. We'll probably have 21 to 24 sites this year that we'll work on.
Wow.
So that's quite a few different places.
Is there any distinction between whether or not the individual you're helping is the owner, or are you helping the landlord, or does it matter?
Well, we'd rather or prefer to help the owner. We've in the past had problems with fixing a property and the landlord would raise the rent after we gave the work.
Exactly.
So if we do that, I have the landlord sign something that they won't raise the rent for X amount of years.
Thanks for all your hard work. I've watched you do this out there, and mostly in the trailer parks, and Radcliff is where I've seen it before. But I know there's a strong demand out in the city of Vine Grove and West Point as well. West Point is an area that definitely needs some help. Everybody watches what you're doing, and it's amazing to see the dedication of all the people that you have there. So we'll give you the final word, and maybe you could tell people how they could get involved with this program as a contributor or as a volunteer or any other resource that they might be able to bring to the table.
Okay, yeah. If you could help us with financial means, of course, Stithton Baptist Church, 95 Park Avenue. If you send a check, it's tax deductible. We'll make sure you get a receipt for that. If you just put on it, World Changers, 100% of that will go to World Changers materials. None of it goes to pay anybody. None of it goes to do anything but buy materials. And so that's one of the greatest ways that we need help, is to make sure we have the funds to do that. And if there's any funds left over at the end of the summer, we keep it till next year's World Changers and use it for that. And so that's one of the greatest ways. The other ways I mentioned a little bit about lunches. If there's restaurants out there that could provide lunches, and they wouldn't have to do it for all of them, even if they could provide like for 2 or 3 or 4 crews, that will help us, because then we only have to find food for the rest of the crews. And so we'll do whatever it takes to make it work. So it's not like they have to have enough for 250 or more. if they could just help us with a few crews. And we've even had churches and stuff that have stepped up and say, I just want to do a crew around us. We'll feed them lunch every day for a crew that's by us, and things like that. Organizations can do that. So there's a lot of different ways that way to get involved. Most of the other volunteer work is mainly to either pick up supplies or get rid of the trash, which is a big deal. But also working here at the church is mainly because we can't just let anybody and everybody go to the sites and work with the youth and stuff. Everybody has to be screened. Everybody has to go through protocol for that. So out on the site itself, which is great, if somebody has that knowledge, and there are ways they can sign up to do that, especially if they have experience like carpentry and stuff, and we can figure that out for them. So that's about one of the only ways you can work on it that way, though. Delivering lunches, though, could be something too that we need. We use a lot of people delivering lunches.
How much money do we need to raise in order
We
to make
try to
this one
raise
work?
30,000 every year,
30,000.
and that usually will. We could do a whole lot more if we had more money.
Right. Right.
Lumber is a lot higher than it was a couple years back.
Yeah.
And so when you start building a ramp now or building a deck, to be honest, we're building smaller decks now.
Yeah.
Ramps have to be to code, so those are the same, but the decks ourselves, we can't build a bigger deck for people because of the finances.
Yeah, exactly.
So things like that. So
Yeah.
there's other things to be done, that cost a lot more than what they did. Roofs are harder to do now. One thing, Kentucky doesn't allow people on the roofs unless they're 18 or older. So we can only do a couple of those a year by
Yeah.
getting a crew that's 18 or older. But that also cost wise is a huge amount compared to the things we do.
Thanks again for coming on. Folks, that was Denver Copeland. He is the senior pastor at Stithton Baptist Church and a U.S. Air Force veteran. He is also the coordinator for World Changers, a national association focused on mission work. They have a program coming up on July 10th, this 2023. They need a lot of support in order to make this work. They've made it work every year for the last several years. Through the generosity of the folks just contributing money and also feeding the crews. So thanks again, Pastor, for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Jack, it was good seeing you, and we'll see you again in about 2 weeks, if not sooner.
That's right.